Good afternoon everyone. Welcome to the daily news analysis of the NEXT IAS. Today is the 5th July 2025. So let's start with the important topics which we are going to discuss today. The first one is regarding the resurfacing of the Nipah virus in Kerala, important from GS2, issues related to the social sector including the health, as well as important from GS3, science and tech perspective. India, second news is regarding the India's notice to WTO regarding levying of retaliatory tariff on USA, important from GS2, important international institution, as well as GS3, issues related to the Indian economy, growth, development, planning. Third is regarding the CGI's Chief Justice of India's reassurance regarding transparency in the Collegium System of India, important from GS2, issues related to judiciary, its structure and functioning perspective. Next is regarding the ham radio, important from GS3, science and tech, as well as the prelims perspective. And the last one is regarding the PM Modi hailing the Indian diaspora and its contribution in the growth and development of India, important from GS2, issues related to the Indian diaspora perspective. So let's start with the today's episode of the DNA. So regarding the resurfacing of the Nipah virus in Kerala, backdrop, Nipah virus has returned to Kerala, sparking the fresh fear in the state regarding its reappearance or resurfacing. This topic is particularly relevant from GS2 perspective, that is issues relating to development and management of the social services including health. So what is the news? Basically in Kerala recently 2 new cases have been reported. The first is with respect to the 18-year-old girl from Kozhikode who died of acute encephalitis syndrome and after she tested positive for the Nipah virus. And second is with respect to the 38-year-old woman from the Palakkad which is undergoing treatment from in Malappuram hospital, also tested positive for this Nipah virus. Also there was one previous case that has been under recovery, the woman from Malappuram, Kerala, 42-year-old woman. So in the context of this backdrop of resurfacing of the Nipah virus in Kerala, government has came into action and took some control measures on urgent basis, of which more than 300 people have been Nipah contact list which are going to be screened for the virus. Second, doctor as well as the staff who has treated the deceased girl and those who have conducted the post-mortem of the deceased girl will be put under quarantine. After that, 3 districts of Kerala, that is Palakkad, Malappuram and Kozhikode have been put on the alert. Next is regarding the drawing of the route map of infected patient in Kerala in Palakkad, so that the persons who are likely to come in that map or contact with the deceased girl will be screened for the Nipah virus. Then next is regarding the contact tracing and quarantine measures. This is very difficult measure because tracing the contacts with respect to the deceased girl, the persons who came in contact with her will be a difficult task in front of the district administration as well as the state government. And again the state 26 coordination committees have been formed across these 3 affected districts to coordinate measure and to prevent the spread of virus. Basically these measures are also taken into consideration from the perspective of ethics case studies, in which such kind of case study may come and you are supposed to write the measures as an administrator. Also Kerala Department of Health Kerala has taken certain steps to prevent the further spread of this disease. First is regarding the implementation of the Nipah virus protocol all over the state. Second is with respect to the inviting of the police assistance from tracing the contacts of those persons who have came in contact with the deceased girl. Third is regarding the state and district level control rooms have been set up to coordinate the measures of different departments for the control and spread of the virus. Helplines and containment zones are supposed to be established in those 3 districts which are found to be susceptible to the spread of Nipah virus. And also at last district collectors are in charge of monitoring those containment zones which are likely to be established in near future. So, let us go into certain basics of Nipah virus. The first, Nipah virus is a zoonotic virus. Zoonotic virus means what? They are transmitted from animals to humans, and they can transmitted through contaminated food as well as directly between the contact of people. So, what are the routes of transmission? They are transmitted through contaminated food, and second is directly between contact between people. This Nipah virus belong to the family of Paramyxoviridae family, and what is the genus of this Nipah virus? Nipah virus genus. So, let us go into certain basics of Paramyxoviridae family. Basically, this is a family of enveloped negative sense single stranded RNA viruses which infect humans, mammals, birds and fish. So, what are the targets? Humans and mammals, birds and fish. So, enveloped means they are having covering of the lipid. So, they are having the envelope of lipid. Second, negative sense means what? They first need to be converted into the positive sense RNA before the protein synthesis. Such kind of viruses cannot directly go for the protein synthesis. Again, they are single stranded RNA viruses. Okay. And what are the likely major human and animal pathogens which belongs to the Paramyxoviridae family? They are animal as well as the human pathogens like measles, mumps, parainfluenza, RSV, canine distemper and Newcastle diseases. So, these viruses causing such kind of diseases belong to this particular Paramyxoviridae family. So, what are the key characteristics of the viruses belonging to the Paramyxoviridae family? First, enveloped. These are surrounded by the lipid membrane. Negative sense RNA. Those viruses belonging to the Paramyxoviridae family are having negative sense RNA. Means what? They require transcription to positive sense RNA from negative sense RNA before they go for protein synthesis and subsequently replication. They are having helical nucleocapsid. Means what? Their RNA is enclosed in helical protein shell. Helical means such kind of shape. Then pleomorphic. Pleomorphic means they are having variable kind of shapes and often they are spherical or irregular. So, there is no any specific particular shape, they can be of multiple shapes. Pleo means multiple. Transmission, they mainly transfer via respiratory droplets, and Kerala being the state with high humidity owing to its coastal location, such kind of transmission through respiratory droplets become multifold dangerous. What is the antigenic stability? Due to their non-segmented genome, it makes difficult for them to undergo antigenic shift. So, thus they are very antigenically stable viruses. Wide host range, they affect the various animals or mammals or fish or humans, thus they are having very broad spectrum of vertebrates, affects broad spectrum of vertebrates. What is the structure of Nipah virus? It is having enclosed structure with matrix proteins, fusion proteins or glycoproteins. These are the different kinds of proteins, matrix proteins or fusion proteins or lipid bilayer which are there form the covering of the Nipah viruses. They possess negative sense single stranded RNA genome. As we have discussed earlier also, they are having negative sense RNA which require transcription to positive sense RNA before the protein synthesis. So, this is the structure of the Nipah virus. And what are the modes of transmission? First is regarding the direct contact, transmission through infected animals or fluids. Second is with respect to contaminated foods, transmission via consumption of the contaminated food with Nipah virus. Third is with respect to human transmission through bodily fluids or droplets like sneezing. So, let us go into the progression of the symptoms of Nipah viruses. Basically, what are the initial signs of progression of symptoms of Nipah virus? First is with respect to fever, headache, muscle pain, nausea, sore throat. So, these are certain basic symptoms which are of the respiratory system which are found in the patients of the Nipah virus. Let us go into the advanced symptoms. Basically, dizziness, drowsiness, acute encephalitis are the advanced symptoms of those patients who are having certain critical stage of health. And in case of severe cases, what happens? There will be seizures and patient eventually goes into the coma within 48 hours. At last, there will be a brain inflammation leading to the acute encephalitis, ultimately resulting into the death. So, this is a kind of progression of the symptoms which is observed in general patients which are infected with the Nipah virus. So, what are the different kind of laboratory tests that are available for the diagnosis of the Nipah virus? First, let us go into the testing method. First is RT-PCR, that is real time polymerase chain reaction. Second, immunohistochemistry. Third, ELISA, enzyme linked immunosorbent assay, and fourth, serum neutralization test. So, these 4 are testing methods which are required for the diagnosis of the Nipah virus. Let us go into the treatment. As far as the Nipah virus concerned, there is no specific treatment or vaccine currently developed. Okay. So, there is no specific treatment. Ribavirin, that is a antiviral drug, it reduces mortality rates in patients which are infected with the encephalitis cases. Third is with respect to supportive care as well as symptom management are the primary approaches. Basically, treatment resides in the symptomatic treatment, as there is no any specific drug or vaccine developed for Nipah virus so far. So, ultimately it all goes according to the symptomatic treatment which are developed in the patients. So, what are the future strategies in case of India needed for prevention of the Nipah virus resurfacing or outbreak? The first is regarding the exploring new technologies. So, India, ICMR as well as the private pharmaceutical companies need to invest in the new technologies or techniques to curtail the spread of virus among the bat populations, like the use of drones or surveillance. Second, prompt detection. So, developing and improving the tools to detect the virus in early stages in communities or livestock would be play a good role in prevention of spread on a large scale. Third is strict enforcement of the guidelines. So, following the strict guidelines in healthcare environments to prevent the spread of virus from spreading from person to person contact, either through sneezing or droplets or any other way. Then regarding this is most important, promotion of the public awareness. So, we need to educate the populations which are susceptible or which are at high risk, and show the signs and symptoms as well as the risk associated with the Nipah virus. So, promotion of public awareness is one of the important to crucial in preventing the spread. Last is regarding the identification of flying fox habitat. Basically, it has been repeatedly observed that Nipah virus outbreaks are more likely in the areas with flying fox habitats, which belongs to genus Pteropus. Residents and visitors which goes to these areas or which reside in these areas need to take precautions similar to those taken in the areas with known Nipah virus incidents. So, these are the certain preventive management strategies for the Nipah virus in case of India. So, this is the practice question with reference to Nipah virus. Consider the following statement. Please solve this MCQ. So, the second news is with respect to India to WTO. It is regarding India's notice to WTO regarding levy of a retaliatory tariff on US. So, what is the backdrop of this particular news? Indian government has notified the WTO of its proposal to levy retaliatory tariffs on the US. The relevance of this particular news lies in the GS3, effects of liberalization in Indian economy as well as issues related to the Indian economy, growth, development, planning. So, let us go into the basics of the news. India has notified to WTO of its plan to levy retaliatory tariffs worth $724 million on the US imports. So, what is the reason behind this radical move by India? It is in response to the US decision to impose 25% tariffs on the passenger vehicles, light trucks, auto parts which are being imported by US on India. So, this particular announcement by India is also important in the context that Indian team was recently in the US for negotiating the trade deal, and we were supposed to reach mini trade deal in near future. So, let us go into the basics of this particular retaliatory tariffs. Basically, retaliatory tariffs refers to the import duties imposed by a country in response to tariffs levied by another country on its exports. So, it is basically kind of response or reaction or retaliatory measure by any country in response to tariffs which are already being imposed by the other country. So, they serve as a countermeasure against pursued unfair trade practices that is being imposed by the other country on the host country, and also its aim to exert pressure on other nation to reduce its tariffs or other trade concessions. So, basic purpose of retaliatory tariff measure is to exert pressure on the other country to reduce tariffs, so that it is become a win-win situation for both of countries. So, what is the India's stand at WTO? India considers US tariffs as a safeguard measures are not in compliance with GATT, that is General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade 1994, as well as the Agreement on Safeguards. So, India, according to India, it's kind of unfair practice, that is imposing of tariff by US on Indian products. So, India, while giving the justification for its tariffs, retaliatory tariffs, India has said that there was no consultation from the United States, which is mandatory as per the article 12.3 of the agreements on safeguard. Second, under the article 8 of the agreements on safeguards, India reserves the right to suspend concessions equivalent to the adverse trade impact. So, this is the these are the rules which are being mentioned by India while giving the notice to the WTO regarding its decision to impose retaliatory tariffs. So, let us go into the economic impact of the tariffs that are being imposed by US on India. The first, US tariffs affect more than 2.8 billion worth of Indian exports that are directed towards US. So, almost $3 billion exports. So, what is the consequence of this? India had to pay more than 723 million US dollars in duties imposed on the Indian goods. So, what is the India's proposal? India proposes to recover an equivalent amount of tariffs on select US products by imposing retaliatory tariffs. So, what was the previous retaliation proposal by India? In May 2025, India also notified WTO that 1.1 billion US dollar retaliation plan is in place against the US tariffs on steel as well as the aluminum products from India. So, India had earlier India has proposed this kind of retaliation tariffs. So, let us go into the certain basics with respect to World Trade Organization WTO, important from GS to important international institutions. So, WTO it is a global multilateral organization established in 1995 for the rule based trading between the nations of the world. So, it is a global organization, multilateral organization, and what is the purpose? To promote the rule based trade between the different nations on the earth. So, it is a global membership group that promotes and manages free trade. So, basic purpose or core purpose of WTO is to promote and manage the free trade between different nations on the earth. It serves as a forum of discussion for governments which negotiate trade agreements between each other, as well as settling the trade disputes among that arises between the different countries. So, settlement of the trade disputes in the course of trade between different nations is also one of the most important function of the WTO. Thus, it is an international body that sets and enforces rules for the global trade. So, let us go into certain historical part. It was established in 1st of January 1995 under Marrakesh Agreement, and this particular Marrakesh Agreement was signed on 15th April 1994 by more than 123 countries. So, this particular Marrakesh Agreement succeeded the General Agreement on Tariff and Trade, which was active from 1948. So, the headquarter of this WTO is located in Geneva, Switzerland, and as of now there are more than 166 countries which are the member, accounting for 98% of the global trade. So, these are certain basic information about the WTO. So, let us go into certain further basics, that is WTO versus GATT, vis-a-vis GATTs. So, this GATT, General Agreements on Trade and Tariffs, and WTO. So, what are the basis of difference between two? The institutional or foundational difference. Basically, GATT refers to series of rules or series of multilateral agreements without an institutional foundation. So, GATT do not have any kind of institutional foundation. It's made up of series of rules or multilateral agreements that evolved over a period of time, and with just an ad hoc secretariat. Second important point, GATT doesn't have or did not have any kind of permanent secretariat. It only functioned on ad hoc secretariat, okay, originating from attempt to establish international trade organization in 1940s. After the Bretton Woods institutions like World Bank as well as the IMF were formed, there was an attempt by all the nations on the earth to establish international trade organization, but this was foiled by opposition from the developed or dominant countries at that time. So, which led to the formation or series of rules which have been ultimately converted into the general agreements on trade and tariff. Okay. Now, let us go into the WTO. This is a permanent institution with a permanent secretariat or own secretariat that has been established in Geneva, Switzerland. Okay. Now, let us go into the applicability of the GATT rules. GATT rules applied for trade in goods only. Okay. It is for only goods, whereas WTO covers trade in goods as well as in services, also trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. So, when it comes to application of GATT, it is confined to goods, but in case of WTO, it is related to goods, services and intellectual property rights. Dispute settlement systems. Let us go into the dispute settlement mechanisms of GATT as well as the WTO. So, when it comes to GATT, it was having less powerful dispute settlement system, which was slow as well as less efficient, and ruling could be easily blocked by the developed countries. But in case of WTO, the dispute settlement system is based on automatic mechanism and not on any kind of dilatory mechanism. It was also quicker and binding. So, the result or declaration of any decision by the WTO dispute settlement body is binding on the members. So, let us go into the organizational structure of WTO. Highest level comes with the ministerial conference. Below this, there is a general council which also acts as a dispute settlement body as well as the trade policy review body, and this general council particularly consists of three councils, that is goods council, intellectual property council and services council. So, this particular is the organizational structure of the WTO. So, let us go into the ministerial conference. This is supreme decision making body of the World Trade Organization. So, it consists of or it comprises of the trade ministers from all the member countries of WTO. So, when did it meet? It meets every 2 years, and after it meets, it appoints director general. Okay. So, let us go into the general council of the WTO. So, this is the WTO's highest level decision making body which is having seat in Geneva, and it meets regularly, unlike the ministerial conference which meets every 2 years. So, it is kind of day to day executive body on behalf of the ministerial conference, and it consists of representatives from all the members of the WTO. So, this particular general council also acts as a dispute settlement body of the WTO as well as the trade policy review body of the WTO, and under this general council there are three different councils, sub councils we can say. The first is for council for trading goods, council for trading services, council for TRIPS, trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. So, these are the three councils which works under the general council. So, director general, basically he is the one who heads the WTO secretariat, and this director general is appointed by the ministerial conference for the 4-year term. Now, next is regarding the trade policy review body. So, what is the function or purpose of this trade policy review body? This WTO General Council meets as a trade policy review body to undertake the trade policy reviews of the individual members nations. Basically, what happens, every 3, 4, 5 years each member country of the WTO releases its trade policy, international trade policy or a foreign trade policy, and that is supposed to be reviewed by the WTO body, which is called as the trade policy review body, and after review it gives its assessment of that particular trade policy of the particular any individual member country. So, this works under the TRPM, and to consider the Director General's regular reports on the trade policy development in various member nations. So, this is the function of trade policy review body. Okay. Now, let us go into the dispute settlement body of the WTO. Basically, this is another function of the General Council. So, what is the function of this dispute settlement body? It is responsible for overseeing WTO's dispute settlement process. During the course of trade, multiple member countries are having trade disputes with reference to dumping, anti-dumping, taxes or tariffs. So, this kind of disputes are overseen by the WTO's dispute settlement body. Okay. It has authority to establish various panels or adopt panel, appellate body reports, maintain surveillance of implementation of the rulings and recommendation of the WTO by the various member countries. So, it has multiple responsibilities, and it also authorizes suspension of concession or any other obligations that are there on the member countries. So, it has a wide ranging powers. Now, let us go into the functions of appellate body. Basically, this particular appellate body of the WTO was created in 1995 under Article 17 of Understanding on Rules and Procedures Governing the Settlement of Disputes. So, it hears appeals against the panel reports. Second thing, it is a permanent body of 7 members, each serving 4-year terms. It is a permanent body of 7 members, each serving 4-year terms. It can uphold, modify or reverse panel rulings that are already given by the dispute settlement body. So, let us go into the major WTO agreements which form the foundational basis of functioning of the WTO. So, the first is TRIMS, that is trade related investment measures. So, what is the purpose of this agreement, or what it consists of exactly? It prohibits trade policies like local content requirements that discriminate against the foreign goods. Second is TRIPS, that is trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. What is the purpose of this TRIPS? It protects the intellectual property rights and provides mechanism for resolving disputes over them. Third, agreement on agriculture. So, what is the purpose of this agreement on agriculture? It promotes liberalization of agricultural trade all over the world, and also it focuses on the market access and domestic subsidies. So, this is one of the crucial agreement for a country like India, in which more than 45% population is engaged in trade, and agriculture contributes almost 70% to the India GDP. So, this is the practice question which we are going to discuss. Which of the following best describes retaliatory tariffs? So, please solve this MCQ. Let us go into the next news which we are going to discuss. Chief Justice of India ensures the complete transparency in the Collegium System. So, what is the backdrop of this news? Basically, Chief Justice of India pledged to ensure the inclusive representation and fairness in the appointments while speaking at the felicitation event of the Bombay Bar Association. So, important, this particular news is important from the perspective of judiciary, GS2 judiciary structure, functioning and organization of judiciary. So, let us go into the details of the news. Basically, Chief Justice of India B.R. Gavai had stated that Collegium System for the judge appointments will uphold the merit, transparency and inclusive representation. 3 criteria: merit, transparency and inclusive representation, remaining unaffected by the external pressure or kind of executive pressures. So, what were the 4 to 5 major points that have been stated by CJI regarding the fairness of Collegium System? First is regarding the transparency and merit. So, CJI assured the complete transparency in the Collegium System, and he has specifically stated that merit will not be compromised because of the any kind of opacity that has been there in the functioning of the Collegium System. Second is inclusive representation. So, what it means, that appointments will include representation from all the sections of the society. Collegium appointments will include representations or judges from all the sections of the society. Third is with respect to resistance of the external pressure. By this he has asserted that appointment process of collegium will remain independent and fair, unaffected by the outside influence, more specifically either by legislature or by executive. Continuity of reform. He has also said that the reforms in the collegium system have already been initiated by previous CJI, that is Justice Sanjeev Khanna, and to ensure the transparency he is going to continue with that set of reforms. So, these are the four major stakes or statements given by CJI on ensuring the transparency in the collegium system. And when it comes to judiciary, overall judiciary and constitution, what were the statements given by our CJI? He has emphasized that the Constitution of India is the supreme and all the three organs or wings of democracy will function under it. So, Constitution is supreme in case of India. Second thing, he clarified that Supreme Court is not CJI centric or Chief Justice centric, and CJI is the only first among the equals in judges. So, these were the important points of or statements given by Chief Justice of India. So, let us go into the history of collegium system or certain basics of the collegium system. So, what is the purpose of this collegium system or why it was formed? Basically, this collegium system governs the appointment and transfer. Two aspects are there: appointment and transfers of judges in Supreme Court and High Courts, not in district or subordinate courts, only to Supreme Court and High Courts. So, what is regarding the constitutional basis? Basically, it does not, there is no any kind of specific or clear constitutional provision or parliamentary law which led to the establishment of the collegium system. It was basically evolved through the Supreme Court judgments over the period of time. Okay. So, it is collegium system, there is no any kind of mention of collegium system in Constitution of India. It only evolved through the Supreme Court judgments over the period of time. So, in case of Supreme Court collegium, it consists of Chief Justice of India and 4 senior most judges. In case of High Court collegium, it consists of Chief Justice of that respective High Court and 2 senior most judges of the High Court. Okay. So, this is regarding the origin as well as the evolution or flowchart of the collegium system. What are the constitutional provisions with respect to the collegium system? First is with respect to Article 124 in case of Supreme Court and Article 217 from the High Court. So, let us go into the certain judicial pronouncements or judicial cases which led to the establishment of the collegium system in India. So, first judges case in 1981. So, what was the recommendation of CJI or what was its result? Basically, it held that Chief Justice of India recommendation can be overridden by valid reasons, by the executive. So, it gave primacy to the executive in judicial appointment and not to the judiciary. But this there was a radical change in the second judges case which happened in 1993. This second judges case has introduced collegium system. It defined that consultation with the CJI as a concurrence of the judiciary. So, it has interpreted consultation with the CJI as a concurrence. Third, it emphasized that it should be the institutional opinion of the Chief Justice of India and led to the addition of 2 senior most judges in the system of or institution of collegium. Third judges case in 1998, it further consolidated the collegium system in case of India. Basically, this third judges case came into the Supreme Court on a presidential reference under Article 143. In this particular presidential reference, Supreme Court expanded the collegium or strengthened the collegium system basically and made it a 5-member body which included Chief Justice of India as well as 4 senior most Supreme Court judges. So, over the period of time, as in second judges case, this collegium system was formed, and in third judges case, this collegium system was more strengthened or more of institutionalized. So, what are the issues or what are the criticisms of the collegium system? First is with respect to the exclusion of the executives. Basically, it violates the separation of power doctrine that has been implicitly mentioned in our constitution. So, judiciary appoints judges without any kind of executive or legislature involvement. Then second, there is a lack of accountability which led to the poor or biased appointments, which can lead to the poor or biased appointments. So, there is no any role of executive in case of judicial appointments as far as the collegium system is concerned. Second, the risk of nepotism or favoritism. It has been repeatedly mentioned by various critics that only 300 to 400 families in India are giving judges or producing judges, extended families. So, there is a lot of nepotism or favoritism in case of collegium system, because there is no fixed criteria for evaluating candidates. There is no any well set criteria for evaluating the candidates. Second, it increases because of lack of criteria, there is a more scope for subjective decisions, or there is a lack of transparency on behalf of judges. Third is violate the check and balances between the different organs of the political system in India, which is leading to the excessive concentration of power in the hands of judiciary with reference to the selection or appointment of judges. Third, next is regarding the undermining the balance among the three organs of the government. So, judiciary, executive and legislature, these three organs are as per the separation of doctrines are supposed to put a check and balance on each other, which will ultimately result in the balance of power. But because of the collegium system, which totally selects or totally appoints judges on its own without any kind of involvement by executive or by the legislature, this balance has been disturbed. Okay, opaque decision making. There is as far as the institution of collegium is referred, there is no official secretariat or no any kind of official documentation of the collegium. Collegium meetings and decisions lacks transparency or any kind of public scrutiny. So, there is a lot of opaqueness in the functioning as well as the institutional formation. Then unequal representation. Critics also said that women as well as the other marginalized groups are overwhelmingly underrepresented in the higher judiciary. So, these are the certain critical issues with reference to the collegium system in India. So, in the context of these criticisms, what are the steps taken by government to improve the judicial process of judicial appointments in India? First and foremost is with reference to the 99th Constitutional Amendment Act of 2014. So, what was its purpose? This 99th Constitutional Amendment aimed to replace the collegium system with National Judicial Appointment Commission. But unfortunately, Supreme Court struck down this National 99th Constitutional Amendment Act by saying it undermines the judicial independence and judicial independence is the basic structure of the constitution. So, it was struck down. Chief Justice of India at that time was J.S. Kehar, who has given this particular judgment. Then next is memorandum of procedure. Memorandum of procedure, this particular memorandum of procedure has been jointly framed by judiciary as well as the central government, and this MOP outlines the procedures for appointing Supreme Court as well as the High Court judges. The present memorandum of procedure, which has been there in operation, it was formed in 1999 and it mandates that Supreme Court Collegium comprising Chief Justice of India as well as 4 senior most judges, it recommends appointments which are being then forwarded by the law minister to the Prime Minister and finally President for the approval. So, this is the present standard operating procedure or memorandum of procedure when it comes to appointment of judges. It is still in the practice. So, this is the practice question. With reference to the collegium system in Indian judiciary, consider the following statement. Please solve this MCQ. Now, let us go into the next topic of the day, that is ham radio. So, what is the backdrop? Recently, ham radio was used by Indian astronaut Shubhanshu Shukla to interact with the students in Bangalore. What is the significance or relevance from the UPSC perspective? GS3 Science and Tech. So, let us go into the backdrop of the news. Basically, Indian astronaut Shubhanshu Shukla, who is currently aboard International Space Station, interacted with the students using the ham radio on 4th of July. This event was organized by one branch of ISRO that is UR Rao Satellite Center in Bangalore, which is there for design, development and construction of the Indian satellites. So, what is the ham radio? This ham radio is also known as the amateur radio, is a licensed radio service that relies on radio waves for personal, recreational or emergency level of communication. So, it is kind of amateur radio and it is kind of licensed radio service that has been that utilizes radio waves. So, what is the functioning or mechanism of this ham radio? It uses a dedicated frequency or transceiver and antenna, the service that can set up between two licensed ham radios by trained ham operators. So, it uses a dedicated frequency and the machineries it uses is a receiver and antenna. So, how does it work? How does this ham radio work? It is a kind of two-way communication system which uses radio frequencies. Second, it involves transmitting and receiving radio waves using the licensed radio equipment. So, it involves transmitting and receiving radio waves using the licensed radio equipments, and it allows for global as well as the local level communication. So, it is having vast scope, local to global, often with the use of repeaters or extended range. So, the type of communications which are being conducted with the ham radio are hyperlocal, that is within community. Second is global, across the countries on the earth. Third is even in space with satellite or international space stations. So, these are the types of communication that can be conducted with the help of ham radio. So, what are the regulatory provisions when it comes to utilization of ham radio or using of ham radio, eligibility and licensing provisions in India? First, any individual who is above the 12 years of age can operate the ham radio in India. Second thing, for license for operation or operating this ham radio has been issued by Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology after proper training and examination. So, these are the regulatory provisions, that is eligibility as well as the licensing in India. So, what is the origin of this term ham? Let us go into certain historical aspects. This particular term ham has been originated in the 20th century as a kind of derogatory term which was used by professional telegraphers for referring unskilled operators of the radio. With the rise of amateur radio over the period of time, this community adopted the term, and by mid of 20th century it has lost its negative meaning or a kind of pejorative meaning. So, this was the origin of the word ham. Now, let us go into the history of ham radio uses in the space. So, when it comes to its use in space communication, what is the history? So, at first time this particular ham radio was used in space by the NASA's Space Shuttle Columbia, crew members of the NASA's Space Shuttle Columbia in 1983 to communicate with the Earth. Second, since October 2000, this radio equipment has been operational on the International Space Station. So, this present International Space Station which has there been the operation, this ham radio service is used since 2000, and this particular initiative of utilizing ham radio on International Space Station is called as the Amateur Radio on International Space Station ARIS. And how does it help astronauts on the aboard International Space Station, making the voice contact with the people on the Earth. Second, astronauts with the help of this ham radio interact with the students around the world. So, these are the two basic uses of the ham radio. Now, one of the important feature of this ham radio is this communication is time bound. What do we mean by time bound? Basically, there is only 9 minutes window to contact with ISS as it orbits the Earth. So, there is only 9-minute timeline or time window. So, what are the applications, real life applications of ham radio? First and foremost, space communication. So, this ham radio has been used by the astronauts aboard the International Space Station. Second, when it comes to astronauts, it facilitates voice contact with the Earth as well as the STEM educational outreach for the students via real time conversation with the astronauts. As our Shubhanshu Shukla had carried out the conversation, real time conversation with students using the voice contact. It also gives impetus to the STEM's educational research. Second, emergency and natural disaster communication. So, this particular ham radio can be used in the situations of emergency or in the instances of disaster management or natural disaster. So, this ham radio has proved reliable during the natural disasters and crisis when regular communication networks fail. So, what are the example of utilization of the ham radio in natural disaster in case of India? The first and foremost is regarding the 2001 Bhuj earthquake. This ham radio enabled emergency rescue coordination. Second, 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami. It was used for disaster response. Third, 2013 disastrous Uttarakhand floods which costed the lives of more than 5,000 pilgrim tourists. This ham radio is also used during various cyclones or landslides or war-like situation all over the world. So, it is having multiple applications. Education and training. So, basically this ham radio is used to teach basic electronics, physics or communication skills. It connects students with scientific activities in space. Example, ARIS, educational contacts, as we have seen in the case of Shubhanshu Shukla. Recreational and personal use. Enthusiasts use it for a long distance communication, experimenting with radio technology. So, it is having recreational use also. Why? So, why should we use the ham radio? Why it is? Basically, it is very reliable and resilient. It is known for very reliable as well as the resilient communication because it functions without internet. It functions without cell towers or it functions without satellite. So, the kind of probability of disruption in the conduction of message is very less in the functioning of the ham radio. Second, it remains operational during the blackouts, network failures or infrastructure collapse in case of natural disasters or emergency situations like war. So, because of this, it is considered as very reliable mode of communication. Second is with respect to emergency lifeline. It can be quickly set up and used for coordination, search and rescue and disaster alerts. So, the technological backup which is being needed is very less and it can be very quickly set up in the emergency situations. Next is with respect to community service. Ham operators often work as volunteers during the public emergencies or government drills or any kind of natural disasters. So, it has utility as a community service also. Then accessible and regulated nature. It is open to any individual above 12 years in India after licensing. So, getting license to operate the ham radio in India is quite easy process. So, let us go into the practice question of the day. With reference to ham radio, consider the following statements. Please solve this MCQ. Now, let us go into the last topic of the day, that is Indian with reference to Indian diaspora. So, what is the backdrop of this particular article? Our Prime Minister Modi, who is on the foreign tour, has held 35 million strong Indian diaspora and its contribution to the India's growth and development. So, our what is the backdrop? Our Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on historic tour to Ghana, Trinidad and Tobago, Argentina, Brazil and Namibia. What is the relevance? GS2 issues related to the Indian diaspora. So, let us go into the backdrop of the news. Our Prime Minister recently visited Trinidad and Tobago, a country which is having deep rooted ties to India through Girmitia, that is the indentured labour community. This visit comes ahead of 180th anniversary of arrival of Indian indentured labourers to Caribbean. So, basically what is the institution of this indentured labourers? Basically, during the British times, British government took labourers from Bihar, Jharkhand, Uttar Pradesh to Caribbean or to Fiji or various island nations for working on the plantations or sugarcane plantations there, and they were kind of bonded labourers which were taken by the Britishers to those islands, uninhabited islands, and they become the permanent resident of those countries, and those indentured labourers became the Girmitia community. Okay, so Girmitia community refers to the indentured labourers in the countries like Fiji, Mauritius, South Africa, Trinidad, Tobago during the colonial rule. So, what is the Indian diaspora? Basically, let us go into certain basics of Indian diaspora, the topic which is very crucial from the GS2 perspective. Indian diaspora refers to the individuals of Indian origin who reside outside India, and they include two type of categories, basically non-resident Indians and persons of Indian origin. So, as per the Ministry of External Affairs report in November 2024, global Indian diaspora population today stands at 34.4 million. Indian diaspora, strong Indian diaspora is there. Second, our Prime Minister has described or referred Indian diaspora as India's pride and called them as a Rashtradutas or ambassadors of India's culture and values all over the world. So, what are the top hosting countries of Indian diaspora? First is USA, which hosts around 5.4 million Indian diaspora. Second is UAE, which hosts around 3.6 million, and Malaysia 2.9 million strong Indian diaspora. So, what are the categories of the Indian diaspora? First is non-resident Indians. These are the Indian citizens. So, they are Indian citizens who are living abroad temporarily for work, studies or other purposes. So, this is the first category. Second, persons of Indian origin. So, persons of Indian origin, these are not Indian citizens, they are the foreign nationals of Indian ancestry, just like the Girmitiya community of Indian. They have migrated generations ago, but they are having the cultural and emotional ties or roots to the India, whether in terms of their ancestral villages, whether in terms of the pilgrimage they do in India, or whether in terms of they are having certain any land that was held by their ancestor, anything. Third is with respect to the overseas citizenship of India. Basically, overseas citizenship of India are the foreign citizens. They are not the Indian citizens, but they are having Indian origin, and these overseas citizens are granted special privileges and long-term visa rights through the operation of OCI card. So, this is the overseas citizenship of India. So, what is the significance of Indian diaspora? Let us go into the significance or importance. India is having more than 3.5 crore diaspora all over, spread all over the world across all the continent. So, it must be having lot of significance. So, let us go into the discussion about the significance of Indian diaspora. First and foremost, political and strategic significance. So, this Indian diaspora which is there in different countries influences host countries' politics owing to its large number. It actively participates in the local politics, influencing policy and programs in favor of India. The example can be given of Indian American lobby in the US Congress supports stronger ties between India and US. Second, electoral support and diplomacy. Promotion of electoral support or exchange of electoral support and diplomacy. Diaspora mobilization during Prime Minister's visits, foreign visits had created a global visibility or a global standing for the Indian diaspora. For example, Howdy Modi events in the Houston, as well as the Namaste Trump event in India in 2020. So, diaspora can be utilized as a mean for garnering electoral support as well as promotion of diplomacy between India and other countries. Third is supporting the India's strategic interest. This can be said with the example of India-US civil nuclear deal, that is 123 agreement that was happened in 2008. Indian diaspora in US had played a key role in signing as well as the promoting this important crucial deal between India and US. So, let us go into the economic aspects of significance of the Indian diaspora for India. First and foremost is remittance. India is the top recipient of the global remittances, receiving more than $125 billion as per the World Bank report in 2023. Among those, Kerala, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar are heavily reliant on remittances from the Gulf countries. Second is with respect to investment and entrepreneurship. Basically, these Indian diaspora contributes to the Indian economy via FDI, startups and philanthropy. The example can be given of Google's 10 billion strong India Digitization Fund, which is being overheaded by Sundar Pichai, who is having who is in favor of supporting the Indian startups. Third, trade links, promotion of the trade links between India and those countries in which our diaspora is living. So basically, Indian origin businessmen, business persons are acting as a bridge between India and host countries. There are number of prominent businessmen who are doing business all over the world. The few examples can be taken of Manji Group, Bidco Africa, Chandaria Group, who have helped to build a strong ties between India and Kenya or various African countries in different sectors of the business or industry. Next is cultural and civilizational significance or cultural and civilizational importance of Indian diaspora. So first and foremost is regarding the preservation of Indian culture. They play a tremendous role in preservation as well as the promotion of Indian culture in terms of language, festivals, foods and values all over the world. Example can be quoted of celebration of Diwali or International Yoga Day or promotion of the Bhojpuri language in Mauritius and Fiji, thus helping in the spread of India's music, films, art, spirituality. This can be example can be quoted with the help of tremendous popularity of Bollywood films all over the world, or celebration of International Day of Yoga all over in more than 180 countries across the globe. Now let's go into the technological aspects of the importance of the Indian diaspora. This Indian diaspora can act as a vehicle of brain gain for India. For example, Indian diaspora can contribute to India through mentoring, collaboration and return migration of highly skilled scientists or businessmen or business person professionals that can act in the promotion of growth in India. For example, the Vaibhav Summit that was conducted by Indian government, it able to harness knowledge from Indian experts in various fields abroad for the growth of India. Next is with respect to tourism and heritage diplomacy. Basically, Indian diaspora do visit India multiple times on multiple occasions. So they are acting, they act as a boost to the inbound tourism of India, whether like visiting the ancestral homelands or for cultural as well as the economic tourism. The example can be quoted of Kumbh Mela, Golden Temple visits or visit to the ancestral villages in Bihar and Punjab. So they are kind of promoters of the tourism as well as the heritage diplomacy. So India being one of the largest country having most number of the Indian diaspora all over the world, identity crisis and cultural assimilation in the host countries. This particular problem is more prevalent in the second and third generations of the Indian diaspora who face challenges in retaining the Indian identity as well as integrating into the host country cultures. Basically, example can be quoted of India's youth in US or UK. They basically they made a struggle for balancing the Indian traditions with Western lifestyles. So this identity and crisis and cultural assimilation is one of the critical challenge that has been faced by the second and third generation members of the Indian diaspora. Second is with respect to the racial discrimination and xenophobia. So we have seen there have been multiple attacks all over the world, especially in the Australia or in USA on the Indian students different period of time. Third is with respect to the legal and political barriers, especially in the Gulf countries. What is the policy of the Gulf nation basically? Whether Indian workers in Saudi Arabia or UAE have no any kind of political representation, and they face a lot of restrictions under the kafala system, which is a kind of sponsorship based employment. Few years ago, around in 2015, one of the female domestic help of India, when asked for the money or salary to her employer, he had cut down her both hands. So such kind of exploitative systems, practices that are being faced by the Indians in those Gulf countries. Third is a labor exploitation and poor working condition in Middle East. Basically, most of the Indians who are working in the Gulf countries are having blue collar jobs. So they have to face lot of labor exploitation practices or poor working conditions like delayed payments, lack of social security, poor living conditions, lack of cultural acceptability, attacks by the citizens over there. So they face lot of challenges there. Then economic insecurity, especially prevalent among low income diaspora. So basically those blue collar workers who are working there, they face lot of economic insecurity. And during the crisis like COVID-19 times, thousands and lakhs of Indian workers repatriated due to the job losses in the construction and hospitality sectors in the Gulf countries. So what are the initiatives taken by the government of India for the welfare of diaspora? First and foremost is regarding the legal as well as the identity initiative. And when it comes to legal and identity initiative, which is the most important, overseas citizenship of India card or expansion. So these OCI cards are extended to the 6th generation Indian origin people in Trinidad and Tobago. This announcement was done by the Prime Minister. So this is a simplified OCI card renewal procedures, merged PY, and also it led to the merging of PIO cards with OCI for ease. E-Sanad and online documentation. So what is the purpose of this particular initiative? Digital verification and attestation of educational and civil documents for NRIs and OCI card holders. Now let us go into certain aspects of overseas citizenship of India. Basically, overseas citizen is a foreign national of Indian origin who has been granted certain rights and privileges in India owing to his Indian ancestry. When did this particular scheme was introduced? It was introduced under Citizenship Amendment Act 2005. Ministry of Home Affairs is the nodal ministry for implementation and administration of any issues with respect to overseas citizenship of India. So what are the benefits or privileges that are granted to the OCI card holders in context of India? First is lifelong visa privilege. Then parity with NRIs, non-residing Indians, in case of economic, financial and educational fields. Third is with respect to the adoption rights in India, they are eligible for inter-country adoption. Third is travel concessions in case of domestic airfare rates, and they are allowed to practice in certain regulated professions like medicine, dentistry, nursing, pharmacy, law, architecture, accountancy. So they are also even allowed to practice in India. So what are the other initiatives for cultural as well as the heritage linkage preservation between those Indian diaspora and India? The first and most prominent is celebration of Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. It held on the every 9th January to celebrate the contribution of Indian diaspora. Basically in 9th January 1915, Gandhiji came back to India from Africa. So because to celebrate that occasion, it is celebrated as a Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. Second, the proposed World Girimitia Conference. This conference is proposed to connect with descendants of indentured laborers from Fiji, Mauritius, Trinidad, Tobago. Next is mapping of Girimitia heritage, which is planned. Basically, what is the purpose of this particular initiative? Documenting the villages and cities in India from which Girimitias have been migrated during the British colonial rule, preserving the oral histories or traditions of those Girimitias who have migrated to these countries like Fiji, Trinidad, Tobago, and tracking their settlement patterns. Now, what are the welfare as well as the protection measures taken by Government of India for the Indian workers? First and foremost, Madat portal. This is an online platform to register the grievances related to the consular services or consular access, especially for those workers, blue collar workers in the Gulf. E-migrate system, this kind of transparent recruitment system for Indian workers migrating abroad to avoid exploitation by the agents. This particular practice, exploitation by agents, is very common in the areas like Punjab and Haryana. And next is Indian Community Welfare Fund. This has been used by Indian missions to assist the distressed Indians living abroad in terms of legal aid, providing them shelter or helping them to repatriate in the original Indian country. What are the other economic and digital engagement initiatives taken by the government? Basically, launch of UPI in foreign countries. India has been recently launching UPI, Unified Payment Interface, in multiple countries for helping our Indian diaspora or workers. So, it has already been launched in UAE, Singapore, Nepal, France to facilitate digital payments for NRIs and tourists who are living there. Second, Trinidad and Tobago became the first Caribbean country to adopt India's UPI. Also, India is signing with comprehensive economic partnership agreement with UAE, which hosts more than 3.4 Indian diaspora, million strong diaspora. When it comes to engagement with diaspora youth basically, or highly skilled professionals, Indian government is taking various initiatives like Vaibhav Summit. It brings together Indian origin scientists and technocrats for collaborative research along with Indian institutions, so that they can contribute their knowledge for their ancestral country. Know India program, this basically it's kind of short term immersion programs for the youth of Indian origin between 18 to 30 years to experience India's heritage and institutions. So, the basic purpose of this program is to make them aware of India's culture, traditions, where their ancestors had lived. Now, Overseas Indian Center Network, OIC network, basically it's kind of facilitation center for which is there in multiple countries to help NRIs and POIs with education, legal support or cultural integration with India. And also, as we know that when it comes to 3.5 crore strong Indian diaspora, there have been certain emergency conditions or emergency situations. For example, Vande Bharat mission during 2021 in the height of COVID-19, it was one of the largest evacuation operations during COVID-19, and over 60 lakh Indians working in Gulf and Africa and other countries have been repatriated safely by the Indian government. So, when it comes to conclusion, Indian diaspora is a kind of strategic asset of India, contributing across the multiple spheres as we have discussed. Effective engagement with the diaspora is a critical as well as the necessity for realizing India's vision of Vikasit Bharat by 2047 and helping India to achieve the global leadership in the 21st century. So, let us go into the practice question. The Indian diaspora can be powerful vehicle for India's soft power projection. Analyze in the light of recent developments such as launch of UPI abroad and Vaibhav Summit. Please write the answer of this question. This is all for the day. Thank you.